GM fam, and welcome. It's a beautiful Friday where I'm at. I hope it's as beautiful where you're at. And we are honored to be spending it inside instead of touching grass, getting some sunshine. But I think it's going to be even better. We're joined by Thomas Matamore of Reserve Protocol, where he serves as the head of platform. Thomas, how are you? Who are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I calling in from San Francisco, California, where it is also beautiful. Not a
This,
cloud in the sky today.
are you in the city itself or like one of the surrounding areas?
Yeah, in the city itself. Although I'm actually the only person on the reserve team, on the protocol team in San Francisco. We're a fully distributed team, so.
Oh, interesting. For some reason, I always figured like you had like we're just like classic Silicon Valley company.
No, we're team is on the protocol team from San Francisco to Puerto Rico to Buenos Aires to Delhi, India to London. We're actually no one's in the same spot. It's actually kind of wild.
That's
D5
is
is
pretty wild.
global.
So wait, why are you still in? So I spent some time in San Francisco and I got out. Like, why are you in San Francisco? You could be
Why
anywhere
are
in the
you
world.
still? I love it here. I grew up here actually
Okay, okay, that's fair.
in the Bay Area, and so after a 10-year stint in New York City, came back during COVID.
That's fair. That's fair. I also spent time in New York and then I moved after grad school to San Francisco. Thinking
Okay.
like because I grew up on the West Coast, I figured San Francisco would be where I'd want to be, and it was better than New York in some ways because I was like South Bay. I wasn't like in San Francisco itself. Um, which is like I'm a boring person, so like I South Bay is a little bit more my steam than like the action of San Francisco.
It's also got the best weather in the country, at least declared by the mayor in Redwood City.
I believe it. I believe it. Like
Yeah.
there was a couple of days of like sun, like snow and like cold. Not even snow, just cold. Like there were a few days it got down to 32, but mostly the fact that you could just always go outside and have a run or like go for a bike ride. You never have to check the weather.
It really is amazing. We spent a year in Palo Alto as well, and it was like, okay, this is good.
What's this we? I thought you were the only reserve person in San Francisco.
My wife and I.
Ah, there we go. There we go. Uh, did she also natively from San Francisco?
No, no, I convinced her to come out here.
And does she like it so far?
Yeah. We're enjoying it. We're enjoying the Bay Area. The Yeah, it's incredible to be after being in concrete jungle for 10 years. It's incredible to be able to drive over the bridge 10 minutes and go on like what I think is one of the most beautiful hikes in the world.
Are you
But
talking
I'm
about
very
Marin?
yep.
I spent a fair amount of time in Marin when I was there, which was like definitely the opposite side of South Bay, right? Like it was an hour and a
Yeah,
half, 2 hour drive, but it was so worth it.
yeah,
Hiking there is just the best in all of California, as far as I'm concerned.
exactly.
You don't camp.
Yeah, the whole thing. It's awesome. Um, but yeah, I feel like this is a timely llama party. There's a lot going on in the curve world.
There's a lot
Uh,
going on in Curve and Reserve as well, so this actually worked out perfect. Like I'm super excited to drill down on everything. How much time do you have? Do you have like a time limit? You said like you're
I blocked an hour and a half.
hour and a
So
half. All right, let's see if we can get through everything in an hour and a half. I might like try and see how long I can stretch you. One of these
I
days, I
gotta
want to
pull
do like
up
what
coffee
one of these
you
days I
know
want to do one of those like Joe Rogan style. Like I don't listen to it, but doesn't he do like 8 hour podcasts or something?
yeah, exactly. The 8 hour podcast, everyone's in the same room.
My problem is I'm not like I'm not social enough to last more than an hour and a half before I run out of steam anyway. So.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, why don't we go ahead and start diving into reserve? Because I'm sure that's what people are like most interested about is like getting into like you have 4 tokens now, right? 4 R tokens.
Yeah. There's been actually 3 tokens launched on the platform, and one is a legacy. It was kind of our beta. We launched, backing up. Our mission is to fight inflation and help expand access around the world to global stable currency. And so we actually launched in 2019 a stable coin that was just backed by other stable coins. And everyone thought we were a little bit crazy. and um,
That's
and it
before the
took a couple.
inflation like became
Yeah,
a meme here in America, at least, right?
yeah, before the inflation became a meme, but also like, what's the value of a stablecoin that's just backed by USDC and at the time it was True USD and the Pax dollar. It was, it was just like three other stablecoins, and we were using it as a test to see whether or not stablecoins themselves are valuable in or something that is attractive to users in hyperinflation countries. We hadn't figured out the yield as a way to battle inflation yet globally. And so, uh, part of the team focused on launching an app in Latin America and giving them access to stable coins, which found, people found that was very attractive, just to use stable coins as money in countries where, 7% inflation a year doesn't really matter when you have 7% inflation a week. And so places like Venezuela and Argentina loved our stablecoin and loved using it every day to interact with, paying at the store, using it. Companies used it to store value and pay their employees. It was really interesting. But then, one of the things that we designed the stablecoin for, our view was, look, companies change, markets change. We don't know what's going to be around. We think that these are the three best assets to back it with right now, but that could change. And lo and behold, in the last 8 months, we had to change that basket for that particular centralized stablecoin three times. Uh,
Let's Yeah, before we get too far, let's back up just a step. When you chose to focus on these Latin American countries, was this sort of like the spray and pray, like let's throw all the spaghetti against the wall and see where there's demand, or did you like really like focus group and test and decide tactically that this was going to be your market?
Yeah, so definitely the latter. I only joined the team a year ago, almost exactly. But at the time, the team's mentality was, we think that stable coins are a good way for people to fight inflation. But like any startup, it was, let's test this hypothesis. And at the time, actually, one of the folks on the team who actually still leads the app side of the company, Gabo, came from Venezuela. He actually, there was a New York Times article on him many years ago. He's famous for helping the government launch the petrodollar.
Oh, was that
And then,
the Petro cryptocurrency? I remember that
exactly.
because
And
that
then,
was like super heavily sanctioned, right? Like,
yeah, it was kind of, it was a totally wild thing, where he helped the government launch it, and they basically realized that it was going to be decentralized and they wouldn't have control over it. And then the government really didn't like him, and he came
interesting.
to the U.S.
So
Yeah.
Venezuela hated him, and America hated him.
But so he was like, look, the country needs stable currency. And so Venezuela was like a very targeted first launch. And, I said it earlier, but when you have 7% inflation a week, you don't care about a couple percent inflation a year. You just want dollars. And that's actually a mentality that's fairly widespread in Latin America. People view the dollar as a safer way to store their wealth because there's been decades of governments and monetary policy down there that has kind of wrecked the savings of individuals. Um, and so
Yeah,
yeah, people just want dollars.
I know when I visited Argentina last August, it was my first time in the region, and it was really like that was my favorite part was talking with people who lived in Argentina about their experiences. Like when you have double-digit inflation, the things you can't do is amazing, right? You can't sign a one-year lease
Yeah.
because you don't know what the price is going to be in like a
Yeah.
year's time. Like how governments budget to do like multi-year construction projects is just I can't even wrap my head around it.
It's crazy, and it's actually so when we launched in Latin America, one of the strategies was to figure out, can we create markets between fiat and stablecoins, and the big concern was, will there actually be a two-sided market? But what we found out is that businesses need to pay back loans, and so that they actually eat up most of the volume from dollars into fiat of the local currencies, and so
Interesting.
it wasn't an issue. But yeah, the Latin America focus was definitely a targeted thing. But with the recent launch of the protocol, we relaunched it after audits in February. It's now truly something that we're hoping to spread around the world. The benefits and beauty of Ethereum is that anyone anywhere can access it. And we launched a platform that allows anyone to launch an asset-backed currency fully permissionlessly with what we think is the least amount of censorship resistance possible. Because we do think that it should be something that everyone can access no matter what, is the stable currency that hopefully fights inflation.
Yeah, of course. So, no, obviously by the time you joined, it was fairly established in Latin America. Do you yourself have like any particular affinity to the region, like family in the area, or tú hablas español?
Sí, sí, un poco.
Oh, un poco.
But
¿Quieres,
yeah,
¿quieres hablar en español o inglés?
solamente ahora en inglés, pero
Ah, good. Bueno.
but,
Mi español no es bueno.
yeah. I actually spent a couple months down there during college, traveling around.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Which
but
area?
Chile, Argentina, Peru, Uruguay, a little bit of everything. College students on a bus-only budget. It was pretty fun though.
Well, it was
Um,
really wild when I was in Argentina because it was like for a crypto conference. Like, people I talked to were saying the absolute best situation is to be paid in like stable coins in U.S. dollars. Anyone who's
totally.
getting paid in stable coins just only sees their current, like their purchasing power skyrocket every single month. It's like, so like you could tell when you're in the region that they get it, and crypto is a thing there in a way
Oh,
that,
totally.
like, I was listening to the podcast you did with Haim Solomon Rex. You
Hmm.
talked about that a fair amount. Like reserve really is the use case for crypto. Like
Yeah,
people like to say there's no use case, but really you've solved it. Like period.
yeah. Yeah, I think stable coins are one of the uh, by far one of the most useful things in crypto today. And people forget that people in the U.S. oftentimes forget that we have really good financial system at the end of the day. Obviously there's been some recent banking disasters, but at the end of the day, like the money generally works when you want to use it as an individual, right? You can go to the store, you can pay, your savings are mostly there that year. Use Venmo and easily send your friends money. But like if you're in Colombia and you're going on a vacation with a friend from Peru and you want to split an Airbnb, you actually have to do like an international money transfer. If you do it from a bank, you have to like go to a bank and sign a piece of paper
Oof.
just to split an Airbnb, like send them money for the Airbnb, right? Like that's crazy. That's
Seriously.
absolutely crazy. And so stable coins are just like a very clever way for people to get access to good financial systems. And the yeah, and so like actually one of the big reasons I joined Reserve is I wanted to focus on something that has the opportunity for great product market fit and is focusing on solving problems that people actually have. And so at the end of the day, that's outside of the U.S. for
Right. Yeah. So
uh,
far, reserves focus just on U.S. dollar stablecoins, right? Like, there's not like peso to stablecoin conversions or anything going on within reserve. Is that
yeah.
like, is that because a lot of the merchants in these countries like are transacting in U.S. dollars, or?
It's kind of interesting. It's actually it's more because the protocol itself is really a meta protocol, and so when someone launches an asset-backed currency on the protocol, they have to choose what are other things that are available in DeFi or that have been tokenized in order to back it. And
Mhm.
so we're very reliant on what is available. And if you actually, we've tried with the peso, but I think Tether launched a peso but the market cap is tiny. And the same thing with the euro. The euros are actually not very accessible in DeFi or deployed
Right.
in DeFi. Like there's a couple euro stable coins, one of which might be listed on Aave, but that doesn't allow for a very diverse basket. And one of the core things that our protocol does is it allows people to diversify the backing, monitor for depegs, and then also harvest yield that is accumulated from the assets being deployed in DeFi. That and the yield can either go back as a appreciation to the token holder, or it can fund an over collateralization pool. And so if you don't have assets that are deployed in DeFi or fairly liquid, it's really hard to create an asset-backed currency for it. You can create, there's a variety of different things where there's synthetic backings or algorithmic backings, but our view is that like fully one-to-one asset backed is the safest thing. And so we're trying to create products that grandmas can hold and feel good about,
Right.
and not need, refresh Twitter every day to check in on whether or not their money's still going to be there.
Yeah, so one of the things in America, at least, is lately there's start to be like a little bit of a narrative, which I don't really feel like I buy yet, of like the world's moving off the dollar. Um, but I think if that was the case, you wouldn't see such demand for stable coins, right? Like it's still like the case where even though maybe some like countries are at the margins trying to make some cosmetic moves away from the dollar, like dollar is still just king and like gold standard around the world, right?
Yeah, that's my view. I won't pretend to be an international policy expert, but
But
I,
then just
I
like
think
from the customers that you have on your platform, right? Like no one's saying like, oh, the dollar's great, but like, could we move to Ethereum or something as backing,
yeah,
right?
exactly, exactly. I think, I mean, my impression is that retail around the world still wants dollars.
Mm,
Um, and, there's some governments that are trying to make some strategic moves, like Russia and China, on like what they're backing different things with and what they're buying oil with. But at the end of the day, my impression is that people just want dollars. That's definitely true on our app. And it's, yeah,
yeah.
that's what
So
I've
if
seen.
someone came to you and said, "Can we use Reserve Protocol to create like a stable yuan or a stable ruble or something?" That something that you could even support? Probably not, because there's probably just
We
no integrations in DeFi for it, right?
that's the big issue, is that it's super reliant on what's in DeFi and what has been tokenized. And so, like, our view is that in general, over the next um, 10 years, more and more assets around the world will be tokenized. Everything from different fiat currencies to more, real world assets, right?
Mm,
Uh, which is a bit of a buzzword, but we're already seeing it with tokenized treasuries, and hopefully in the long term, there's more things like tokenized equities and bonds and real estate, et cetera. Because long term, our vision is actually that there can be an asset-backed currency that's a fully diversified portfolio of how people have historically, and the wealthy in particular, have historically stored their wealth. And wouldn't it be so cool if you could just store your wealth and spend your money using the same denomination and not have to worry about portfolio allocation and things like that on a day-to-day basis? The fact that I don't know about you, but many of my friends spend a huge percent of their brain power every day and every week and every month on beating inflation, right? And it's kind of a crazy thing, right? Like, as a society, how much brain power are we collectively spending on just managing our collective portfolios to beat inflation? Right? Like, it's a crazy concept. What else could humanity do if they didn't have to worry about that?
And so I gave up on it for my sake because like 2020 or so like is when I decided I'm just gonna like dive all in on crypto, and this was like peak money printing. And
Yep.
like the inflation thesis was one of my reasons for like for that, right? Like I said, okay, there's absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to like beat inflation in my bank account, which at the time was giving point 0.0001%, if that. Um,
Yep.
so I really bought into the Bitcoin as inflation hedge narrative and all that, and it proved completely wrong, right? Like, um, so I almost like don't even care about beating inflation anymore because, as it turns out, the only thing you could have held from 2020 to 2022 was the U.S. dollar, which still blows my mind that that was the winning bet when everyone would.
Yeah.
All these smart people were trying to escape from it. Like, I just realized I'm not smart enough to escape from these things, right?
Exactly. Me neither. Me neither. I learned a long time ago that I'm a terrible day trader.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
don't even try. So but as far as like beating inflation, though, like because this is the mission for Reserve, like you're just specifically focused on local hyperinflation of regional currencies, right? Like you're not trying to beat U.S. dollar inflation. Like that's still the safer bet.
well, it's kind of interesting. with the app, we're trying to expand access to inflation beating currencies. But with the protocol, we are trying to help people battle inflation with simple assets. And so there was actually recently an interesting R token that was launched on the platform called HiUSD, which is a USD denominated yield bearing stablecoin. It's actually backed by Flux Finance tokens, which is kind of sort of a derivative of treasury yields. It's also backed by some curve pools that have high yield. And so like the MIM pool and the EUSD pool both have fairly high yield. And so that R token, HiUSD, actually has like an 8% yield at the moment. And who knows if it's scalable? Who knows if it's the right basket to beat inflation in the long term? But what's pretty interesting is you could beat inflation at the moment by holding that. And so our view is actually that in order to beat inflation, you need to find some way to harness real economic activity. And an interesting way to do that that wasn't available before in like a diversified, fully fungible way is with DeFi tokens, where you can have these assets that can be the perfect split, go down to 18 decimal places, and that accumulate yield based on real economic activity, whether that's trading fees, lending fees, etc. And so HiUSD is actually it isn't a savings account, but it has similar properties to a savings account that one might get at a bank, but you can access it anywhere in the world, which is what I think is really cool. And it can be bridged to other chains, and people can take advantage of that 8% yield just by holding this token in a MetaMask wallet, in a L2 wallet, once it's been bridged, anywhere. Which is pretty awesome. And then, oh yeah, by the way, there's the over collateralization. So if anything defaults, that over collateralization pool will be the first capital at risk. And so, like for instance, if MIM depegs, which happens, fairly reasonably frequently, then that pool would kick in, and no matter where this token is held, it will make up the difference to the holders of the token. So there won't be any loss.
So when I was in Argentina, it was like about 4 or 5 months into like the post Do Kwon Terra collapse era, and they had gotten hit so hard by that because like look at the situation. For the first time, they're winning. They're beating inflation and just smashing through it 20%. It's like for the first time, all these people who felt like they were just getting dumped on had their chance to win. So a lot had piled into UST, and of course they lost everything, which is like really really heartbreaking. Is there like a once bitten twice shy aspect of this where they see 8% interest and it's not 20%, but it's close enough, so they feel like maybe I shouldn't touch this? Or is it just like the casino never stops, like people will always keep chasing yield? So even though this one's a little safer, like it just people keep willing to jump right back in. What have you seen so far with HiUSD?
I think that I mean it's really early. It was recently launched a couple weeks ago, but I think in general people are definitely throughout the whole world a lot more conservative at the moment, right? One of the things that made us at Reserve very sad about the whole Terra thing is that it was fairly predictable, and the there was a lot of deceptive practices at the time where people weren't transparent about the risks, and created all kinds of wrappers on top of Anchor and Terra, and didn't really tell people what the risks were. Just promised that 20% yield and used it to grow, right? And so my hope is that people recognize that transparency is very important. And one of the things that's really cool about the Reserve protocol and our tokens is everything is super transparent on chain. You can see exactly what's in a basket. We're working on one of the things that I'd love to see built over the next year or so is like portfolio analysis tools that allow people to really dig deep into what's backing something. What is what are these lending tokens that are backing it? What are they collateralized by, et cetera? These should be things that, the people that care about, that are doing the research on Twitter, et cetera, can easily dig into and see what the risks are with something. And so my hope is that on-chain transparency becomes something that people actually really value. Um, this is a bit of a myopic take, but uh, if this thing had existed in that era, I do think that it could have mitigated some of the risks or mitigated some of the pain that was felt throughout the industry, right? Like, what did we see? What collapsed during that time? It was people taking, under collateralized loans that no one knew about. It was people piling into things they didn't understand, and so, I don't think DeFi is going to get less complex over time. But I do hope that people value transparency that comes from on-chain DeFi.
Yeah, now I used to have, I can't find it anymore. There used to be like a reserve.org/stats page or something that shows a lot of that.
So register.app is our DApp
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
has
nothing here.
that's got all the different R tokens that have been launched. And so if you go to a high USD, for instance, you can see what it's backed by. Um,
Where's where should I look on here?
where are you? I'm looking at your live stream. So if you click on the register icon, or you can flip ETH
There we go.
plus. Now scroll down to high USD.
Nice,
Yeah, and if you
510K. And it's getting, there it is, 9 point, or no, 8.12% yield.
yeah, and
It is,
so it's actually the collateral is actually generating more than that, but as you can see here, 16% of it goes on the right. You can see 16% of it goes to RSR stakers, which is the over collateralization. And then 3% actually goes to the person that deployed it. And so what's cool is that, entrepreneurs can launch products on this and participate in some of the growth.
I
If
know.
it does,
One of the people from your team has been trying to convince us to launch PacDAO stablecoin.
that would be awesome.
I think it would be awesome. Like, I really want to play with it. Like, for my sake, though, I'm in the United States. So
Yeah.
I think I look at launching something on chain and just think, oh, okay, if I like do an NFT drop, I'm going to prison. Um, like, how would you respond to someone like me that doesn't want to go to prison for using computer tokens?
um, at Reserve, we have many American citizens and would all like to remain American citizens in good standing. So we do things by the book. Um, I think, look, I'm not a lawyer, et cetera, but what's cool about this is the protocol itself is a factory. And even when, you deploy a new set of contracts using that factory, all you're doing is deploying contracts that determine how someone can create some of this or not. And so the code then exists, and anyone can then go create new versions of this token. Um, and it doesn't necessarily, no one's issuing it. It's just the code that's issuing the stablecoin.
Well,
Um,
so that part I understand. Like, and I certainly know that, like, would think that, Reserve protocol is pretty safe in terms of like your standard stuff, right? You just deployed some code, people use it to deploy code, but someone's going to go to prison, and I feel like it's going to be me, because if I'm using it to launch a stable coin, like, doesn't that put me like right in public enemy number one territory?
I'm very excited for some regulatory clarity on this front.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of good things that we've been hearing. There's like scary headlines all the time, but it does seem like people are in the lawmaker groups are starting to understand this stuff a bit more. So I'm optimistic. I'm also potentially optimistic to a fault
Yeah.
that
I
there'll be some clarity on this.
I hear that. As a person who is doxxed and doing cryptocurrency in the U.S., you kind of have to be. Um,
Yeah.
so, like, it's a bit of a detour, but like from what you've seen of the like stablecoin legislation, I know there's like the most recent bill a couple of weeks ago got leaked, which I thought was mostly pretty good. Is it the case that if it goes kind of along those lines, like you're sort of where you need to be with reserve?
Yeah, what's been interesting, I won't, honestly, it's hard to keep up because so many different things are leaked and they're all so early, and they're all like years away from actually coming into action. But um, what's been interesting is almost all of the laws so far that have been proposed are very focused on fiat-backed stablecoins,
Right.
which is like a very particular thing. And I think candidly, regulation there is good, right?
I agree. Yeah.
Um, right? Like New York, the New York Financial, whatever it is, New York NYDFS, New York Department of Financial Services,
Right.
they've held up Paxos to a very high standard. And candidly, I think it's good, right? Like I like that Paxos has to keep those dollars in very specific things and be transparent about their audits, et cetera.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's
I think,
good until they follow all the rules, but still get attacked by the SEC for being a security.
yeah. Yeah, that was interesting. It's hard to tell what actually happened there with
That's
the
true, and
US.
that seems like
Right.
it's really contained to like them attacking Binance, which like
Yeah.
arguably like depending on how they go after Binance, it actually could also be good. So
Yeah, it's really hard to tell what's going on with some of that stuff and what's going on behind the scenes. But yeah, I like the fact that fiat-backed stablecoins should have mandatory audits and attestations to where the reserves are and how much is there. I
and
like
if
that.
that was
That's
the
a
case,
good
that could
thing.
actually just serve as like really pristine collateral for Reserve Protocol, right?
Exactly.
Because
Exactly. So.
you were talking about how in the podcast with Haim about how like you launched EUSD and then had USDC depeg like a week later, right?
Exactly. So one of our partners launched EUSD, and then yeah, and it's backed 50% by USDC deployed in Aave and Compound, and the mobile coin team launched it, by the way, on the platform, which was really exciting to see. And I can tell you more about why they did it in a sec.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2 weeks later, there was like a $8 million market cap at the time. USDC depegged, and that was not what anyone expected. Um, but we were on high alert, not really because we had to do anything, but just because it was the first time that the protocol had really been tested. Um, and it was great to see the protocol did what was expected. It monitored the Chainlink Oracle for USDC went down. The protocol detected that, and as it auctioned off the USDC, recollateralized with the emergency backup defined collateral, which was USDT at the time. I think one thing that the governors of USD learned is that you need more backups. Um, and USDC can't be the one thing you're relying on to be the backup. So there was so yeah, everything worked. RSR was sold off from the staking pool to make up the difference. And in the normal course of operations, that can all happen before the FDIC opens the doors on Monday, which is pretty cool.
I know it's so wild. And yeah, who would have ever thought that USDC would be the one that like, everyone's been fudding Tether forever. Like I didn't have it on my bingo card that USDC was going to depeg. Now, is it
That,
the case that you were okay because just because like USDC only depegged like 90 cents? If USDC had depegged, let's say, much further, like to like 50 cents or 30 cents, would you have been in trouble? Or was it like that shift over to Tether so seamless that it didn't matter?
I'm trying to. I don't remember exactly, so I don't want to say the exact numbers, but well, let's see. The RSR, the staked RSR pool for USD took like a 2.5 or 1.5% haircut. Um, so it could have withstood. My mental math is going to fail me here, so I won't try to do it. But it could have withstood a much larger depeg of USDC. But it really all depends on how much staked RSR there is in that over collateral pool, and what the depeg is and what percent of the basket that is. Um, because, like for instance, USD is 50% backed by USDC. And so, I think the protocol sold it at like 96 cents, I believe. And so that's really only a two cent loss
Hmm.
for USD that needs to be recollateralized. So diversification is important, right? Like diversification is something that throughout investing history, everyone has talked about being important. In crypto, that's not the case, weirdly, probably
Yeah,
because there's so much crap.
it is weird because every time I've tried to diversify is when I lose money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But if you're trying to preserve value as opposed to grow wealth, diversification is very good. Um, and it's a kind of a proven method to spread out risk. I think the opposite end of that is if you're trying to make a lot of money, you take more risk and try to choose the winners, and then there's more upside. But
So EUSD is by far the biggest one. It's now, in eight figures here, 13 million market cap.
yep.
And you've been just having a lot of fun, I've seen, just watching as it kind of keeps adding on. Is most of this like merchant demand? Like, what's the demand for EUSD coming from so far mostly?
So there's a couple things. So the app, there's like 6 million USD, I believe, that is held in the app wallet, which is the customer deposits. There's also, and this is actually a good transition, there's also the EUSD bridge to the mobile coin L1. Mobile coin launched USD in order to bridge the stablecoin to their privacy focused L1 so that there is digital cash available. They have an app as well. It's called Mobi that you can. It's basically like what I envisioned crypto would be like in the beginning. You can actually just use dollars, kind of like that. It's a very Venmo like or Square Cash App like experience, and you can send USD to anyone in the world in a couple seconds without having to worry about gas fees or anything like that. And then the third big driver of growth is the curve pool. That's where around half of the supply is held right now. And so we're big fans of the Curve convex ecosystem, and I've been accumulating governance power there for around a year now, and will likely continue to do so in the future, because we see it as a great place for liquidity to be built in stablecoins.
Nice, nice. And obviously, like, yeah, Reserve's been like very, very early at like accumulating a lot of assets for it. So it seems like that's going to be, we'll see. But it seems like for now at least, it's been a good investment. I
Yeah.
saw that it was like maybe a month ago now that you started integrating Convex into some of your apps on Reserve. How has that been going? Are
Yeah.
people excited or
So
are they just like, what is this?
people are definitely there's definitely when you try to explain the curve ecosystem to people, there's always confusion. But staked curve LP tokens on Convex are great collateral that people are excited to build stablecoins with. And so High USD is actually backed by the MIM pool staked on Convex and the USD pool staked on Convex. And so it's like 72% of the backing of High USD is Convex LP tokens. The other 27% is Flux Finance tokens. So it's yeah, we're excited about that collateral plugin, and it'll be interesting to see what other types of things people will want to see built. Uh,
So the primary use case for the convex then is as collateral for different stable coins people can launch. This isn't for like merchants who have an extra $100 in their bank account to like stake into convex and earn a dollar yield on that, right?
exactly. The protocol is really flexible, and it can actually interact with as long as someone writes a collateral plugin, which basically determines how do you handle default scenarios and where is the oracle. That's like the engineers on the team would laugh at me, but that's kind of the TLDR of what a collateral plugin does. It once there's a collateral plugin for any asset in DeFi, then it can be used to back a R token. And so we've talked to we're writing some of them ourselves, but anyone can write one of these things and deploy it. And then so You could back it. You can back an R token with all kinds of different things. There's actually, one of the other interesting R tokens that was launched, which kind of demonstrates the flexibility of the platform, is a diversified liquid staking ETH token called ETH Plus. And it's backed by Rocket ETH and Lido ETH. And 50-50 right now. The idea, it was deployed by Iridian, who works closely with the Ethereum Foundation on various different liquid staking projects. And it's the idea is that it will be Ethereum aligned. The mandate is actually something that's written to the chain, and it's intended to be the thing that governors use to make decisions. Is the idea, and the goal here is for it to be Ethereum aligned, diversified ETH staking.
So it seems really cool, but it also seems like it's not really a fit for your kind of current customer base. If your current customer base, like, which I just kind of imagine are like these tiendas around Latin America, or like
Yeah.
maybe like mobile coins, really good example because like in third world countries, mobile phone usage is huge,
Yep.
and people bank on their phones effectively, sometimes using like minutes. So I don't necessarily see this set being interested in Ethereum liquid staking tokens, though. Is this like Reserve is kind of expanding to a new market, or trying to bring Ethereum staking to the masses? Like, what's the play here?
Yeah. Um, the platform is permissionless, so anyone can launch whatever they want.
Hmm.
But I think the second thing that's interesting is the protocol is a product that anyone can use. The app is, it's a sister product. We think they work well together, but they don't necessarily need to always be working towards the same thing, right? And so what's really cool about the app is it's the first primary user of USD, right? People around Latin America can use USD. But the app is one of hopefully many customers for our tokens that are launched on the platform. And so we see them as complementary, but not necessarily like always just doing things that will benefit the other. The protocol itself, our hope is that everyone around the world can use it, whether or not they have access to the app. I actually don't have access to the app because I'm in the U.S. at the moment. Hopefully in the future that'll be changed, but it's something the team's working on right now. Is come to the U.S. But yeah, so ETH Plus is an interesting product that we hope to see take off. That's been launched, but the protocol itself actually is a really simple business model. I mean, it's not really like the company business model, but the company that is building the software, our business model is we're staking RSR in these pools, and the higher the market cap of the R tokens, the more revenue that we can earn. And just like any other participant in the ecosystem, any RSR holder can choose to stake RSR on these R tokens and participate in the revenue that's accumulated by them.
So, and then correct me if I'm wrong. That means that in the event of like the DPEG, your company, then the people staking the RSR are the ones who are at risk of losses, right?
Exactly. They're the first capital at risk. And so there's very clear aligned incentives, because the governors are responsible for two things. One is choosing the basket that backs an R token. They can update the basket if they so choose, or vote to keep it the same. And then they're also responsible for determining the revenue split. They can update that as well. Those are the two primary economic functions of governance on the Reserve protocol. And so if the people that are the first capital at risk are also the people that are making the basket decisions, we think that that's a really clear, clean alignment of incentives. Don't put things that are too unsafe in there, otherwise you'll lose your money first.
Got it. Got it. And then, like, how does your team kind of like go about deciding this? Because right now you have four tokens. Like, where are you putting your RSR, and like, how do you come to that decision?
Um, we hope to make it a bit more public in the future, but things that we think are safe places to stake. Our team we've staked on all four of our tokens here, and aim to continue to do so. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. Everything's very experimental. Look, high USD is backed by MIM, which has a history of depegging. But it's a pretty. Hopefully, the yield makes up for it, right? And it'll be really interesting to see where the market decides is a safe place to put RSR in these R tokens. Like what yield makes it attractive? At what point is it like, okay, I think that makes up the difference of the risk that you're taking on in the case of defaults.
Yeah, Mim is like a funny one. I've been with on my like personal small bags, like they always seem to find their way back to Mim. And I kind of trust it at this point because it has been the case where like it's made up for in gains any losses that are like temporary depegs, and it's money I'm expecting to lose anyway. But it just I haven't lost any money yet is the surprising thing. I've only made money off off of Mim.
It keeps coming back. It's resilient. I know the MIM team in general is trying to. I think they're focused on profitability and getting safer assets on there generally is what I understand some of their goals to be. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, at the end of the day, it's more or less a maker clone, right, with more diverse collateral options. Um, so there's all kinds of stuff going on in the CDP space with makers endgame, dies getting upgraded apparently. there's there's a lot going on there. But I agree. Generally, MIM has found its way back from a DPEG.
What do you know about Flux Finance? I haven't looked into them too far. Of course, you mentioned that they're backing some of the EUSD, sorry, high USD.
Yeah,
So,
I'm really excited about Flux. I think it's super cool. It's so Ondo launched tokenized treasuries, right? The OUSG token. Um, and we've spoken to their team a couple times. It's OUSG is something that's only available to qualified investors, though, right? It's a
mhm.
permission token because treasuries are a security. What's interesting about Flux, though, is any of those qualified investors can deposit their OUSG there as collateral, and then anyone can lend stablecoins for those qualified investors to borrow and lever up OUSG. And so the Flux tokens like FUSDC or FDI, it's basically like they continue to approach treasury yields minus the spread that you're paying that the lending market has. And so it's, Flux is the fourth largest lending market on Ethereum.
Didn't
Uh,
know that. Wow.
um, in the last, since they launched a couple months ago, there's like $60 million of TVL, I believe.
Wow.
It's been growing really quickly. And what's really cool about this is that the treasury market in DeFi terms is basically unlimited, right?
Hmm.
Like treasuries are $1 trillion market,
Right.
$1 trillion market. And so if they can figure out how to scale, you can imagine the base DeFi rate kind of being set at the Flux rate, which for the foreseeable future will probably be higher than what we're used to. Um,
Yeah, it sort of makes sense to me. Like, yeah, there's been so much, so many people kind of like sounding the death knell for DeFi just because treasury rates have shot up, and in some cases, like the T-bill rate is giving you better yield than you can get in DeFi. But I
mhm,
kind of thought that that was just a matter of time. Someone was going to figure out how to get T-bills on chain, and then do
yeah,
so in like a way that's not gonna get them like rated.
yeah.
And I figured when that happened, like it was just like it would spill over into DeFi, and I feel like it's starting to happen. So
Yeah, it's been like a bizarre situation where DeFi yields are lower than treasury yields. And
yeah.
the inverse was true too, right?
Hmm.
Like during the zero interest rate environment, DeFi was really popular because the yields were higher.
And that was like the
Um,
killer use case for DeFi back then.
exactly. And so I imagine in the future, like it would be natural if ramps are effective and efficient and people can do intraday transfers, that those rates should approach the same, right? Like
I would think so.
DeFi at this point has proven itself to be fairly safe. I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but like Compound and Aave, they've functioned really well during the downturns and during the huge sell-offs as fairly safe lending markets. And so it would surprise me if over the next 5 years that DeFi rates don't approach treasury rates as at least the minimum.
Yeah, so I agree with that. Although I do think, though, one of the things we have learned, at least for the past year, is that like for all the advantages of DeFi, because I think there's a fair amount of advantages, right? Like even if you take away the yield, like there's like the composability, there's the like accessibility, there's the fact it's up 24/7, the safety, own your own keys, and yet none of that matters. We only see the TVL and DeFi's go up when the yield is high, and when the yield is below, we see TVL go down. So at the end of the day, yield is the only killer app. Is that is that a fair assessment of the situation?
Yes, yes and no. I mean, in traditional finance, yield, it's the same thing, right? Like everyone just cares about rates and how to make money with your money. I'm obviously drastically simplifying, but rates kind of rule the world, right? And so it does make sense to me that money would flock there when rates are high. But to your point, like Reserve couldn't have been built without the tokenization side,
Right.
and without the like uh, the ability to take tokenized lending positions and compose them together into other interesting things to back asset-backed currencies. And so, like, I do think that there's, the AMM was a true innovation in my mind. The stable swap AMM also a true innovation. Uh, I think that these tokenized positions can also unlock a ton of really interesting things. I mentioned this earlier, but Reserve is a meta protocol and it relies on other things being available. Like that, this would have been something that could have been built and that people would have access to without other DeFi aspects. So
Yeah. And
I
it
think there's
really. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna finish up. Like I do think that we're gonna see very interesting things that get built over the next couple of years as more time and money comes into the space and people can just have time to get comfortable with it and build new things.
It really blows my mind how little people understand what's actually going on in DeFi, right? Like if every now and then, like I catch a glimpse, like at the gym of like CNBC or whatever, the financial news, and like they don't know what's going on in cryptocurrency. Like they know some news about Bitcoin, then they also see the Ethereum, Litecoin, and Bitcoin cash prices on the same like pop up, and that's
Yep.
it. They I actually think that more people would be like astounded if the like traditional financial media talked a glimmer of what's going on in cryptocurrency. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I'm happy they're not because it's like the weird subset of degens who do fall into the rabbit hole and find their way here. Like we know
Yeah.
what's going on, and we know that like this is a million times better than what exists in the traditional finance system. And like the last aside is like when I talk with like people who are still like working in the traditional finance system, um, like you just you get that impression that they're the dinosaurs and DeFi is the comet, like more than anything else. Like when they talk about what they do for their jobs, it just seems so clear
Very,
to me being in the space. But again, I'm like super optimistic like you. So
there's a couple of interesting things, right? Like to me, the only way that people can understand it right now is if they use it. That was like for me at least. That's how I learned. And I think it was early 2021. I used DeFi for the first time, even though I've been following crypto for since 2014, and buying things like Bitcoin and Ethereum, and always like testing different things out. I used the DEX really early on, but when I used MakerDAO to take out a loan against my Bitcoin and Ethereum, it was a mind blowing moment because I was working in lending in traditional fintech. And it was a mortgage company. It took 30 days to close a mortgage, and we had like 10,000 people at the time, and we did similar lending volume, obviously different products, but we did similar lending volume to MakerDAO at the time. And that was insane to me, right? Like, a couple clicks, I got this huge loan, and all of a sudden, that was it. I didn't have to go through this process or talk to a loan agent or anything like that. It was just done. And so, like, that was a mind blowing moment for me. And I feel like the UX just has to get better. And that brings me to the second thing, which is it's really hard to build good UX with decentralization. And
Oh,
I'm
it's
hopeful it gets better over time. But it's really hard.
yeah, it's so I feel frustrated because like I'm a coder, right? So like I always have the option of like when the UX is not optimal, like I find my way around Etherscan or the smart contracts, but I know that I'm like a very small subset. And it's not there, to be honest. Like I can make a transaction on MetaMask. I could probably convince or teach my parents how to do that, but all the other little things like do they know how to replace a stuck transaction? Do they know how to set the gas so they don't get screwed over on gas fees? Do they
Yeah.
know how to avoid getting sandwiched by MEV bots? Like these are all just things that like I understand because I follow the space obsessively. Um,
Yeah.
it's not yet there for everyone. I think Reserve is one of the closer ones to getting it there for everyone, to be honest. So I think
Uh,
what you're doing there is like phenomenal. Although I haven't seen the app, so I can't say because I'm stuck in America here.
yeah, it's kind of funny. Like, I don't think that it's realistic that people use DeFi directly in the future.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, it doesn't make sense to me. Great experiences are built by unified teams. And so, like, I'm super excited to see what happens with Base. I think Coinbase has the opportunity to build like a DeFi interface that can leverage a lot of the things happening behind the scenes, but be a unified, clean experience. Um, I think they've done a great job with the Coinbase wallet uh, to simplify that, and exposing uh, a single interface that ties into all of these different protocols. I think can be really really powerful because then you actually get like a bank-like experience, right? But yeah, we're ways away from that. But also Ethereum, I don't think is meant to be used. Like you and I don't go. I don't even know what sits behind a Bloomberg terminal. Like right? Like an API to NASDAQ, right? But like you and I would never do that, right? Like we use Robinhood, which is like 3 steps away from that. Um, and I'm generalizing, but Robinhood's an example, or Schwab, or any of these things. They're like 3 steps away from that base layer, and Ethereum's like the base layer. And so I don't think it's expected that the masses are using the base layer in the future. It's we're like using the terminal at the moment, right? Like no one does
Yeah.
that to watch Netflix.
So I feel like the downside though with all of this is like because we have this permissionless like financial system and people do find their way on, and one of the beauties of it is that anyone can build anything. But then that's also like becoming one of the major issues in the space, right? Like people keep using it for Ponzi schemes, fraud, scams, rug pulls, and then each cycle this happens, like as a industry, like we're still taking it on the like on the business end because of everything that Do Kwon and SBF did, and it's going to be like years before people forget and take us serious. Maybe months. I don't know. People have short memories, but
Yeah.
um, like and Reserve has to, I'm sure, grapple with this because you've built yourselves this set of permissionless contracts. Like, how do you ensure, or like, how do you keep the space tidy so you don't have like scammers coming in and polluting it?
There's yeah, it's kind of interesting. The protocol is permissionless, uh, but anyone can build a dApp, and so we partnered with a third party to build the dApp, and they have the ability to um, show what they would like and hide what they would like, right? So register can just not list things, and I expect that that's in the future people can use this infrastructure behind the scenes and then just can only surface what they think is good or safe and make the decisions on that end. So I do think I think one of the big things that scared me in I think it was 2020 was like the Canadian trucker thing. Maybe it was 2021.
Oh yeah,
But right, like that to me was like a very scary thing where the base layer was permissioned. No matter what, like whether or not you believe in, uh, however you view that situation with the truckers and whether or not they were doing the right thing or the wrong thing, the fact that someone could hit a button and shut off their access to their money that they had earned rightfully in their lifetimes, to me was like a terrifying thing. And so like I think it's key that the base layer is permission or permissionless. And then anyone can build an app on top of it and make their own decisions there.
Yeah, so at that time, I was it was kind of a weird timing because I was like with PacDAO, we were basically like we saw that situation and we are like, this is like seems like an obvious use case for cryptocurrency. So
Yeah.
we were poking around with this idea in this kind of way that I end up like inadvertently wandering into the middle of active battlefields on accident in my life. Um, and like there I had that back of my head. I was like, maybe I shouldn't touch this, but I was like, okay, let me like put on my product manager hat. And I just like started going on Twitter and saying like, this looks like a very clear use case for crypto. We're a team of developers here. We would like to build an app that could help you with this kind of situation. um, could anyone connect us with a potential user or customer in Canada that might want this? And to my kind of relief, we didn't find anyone. Um, because if we had found people, then I would have had to build it, and I'd probably be in a prison cell right now. Um, but but it kind of told me that unfortunately, despite this happening, where like there's a incredibly clear like use case for cryptocurrency here in like first world nation or like an adjacent to first world nation, and people didn't get the message. Like there was nobody actually like that took this as a moment that's like, I have to get out of the like dying financial system and into this new one. So I don't know if people are going to learn is what I like
Um,
take from the whole situation.
it's one of the sad and scary realities is that people have a really hard time assessing risk. And so one of our hopes is that there is a small set of people that care a lot about it and can be good governors for these things. But it's not realistic. And this is actually one of the issues I think that decentralized governance generally has is finding the people that are economically and motivated and capable of making good, safe decisions. Right? Like one of the benefits of the Fed is that Powell is smart, right? At the end of the day, and so you can
Yeah,
like
I'd agree.
appoint the smart guy, right? And the smart guy that knows a lot about this particular thing. But that's not something you can necessarily do with decentralized governance. The people that own all the tokens aren't necessarily smart, right?
Oh yeah, you
And they
see
might
this
be
all the time
malicious.
with Curve. Like, so Curve will basically nearly any gauge vote that goes up, people just vote right for it because everyone wants yield, right? But it's not that easy, and that's why you have this whole crypto risks team that is just sitting there yelling at people like, please just don't vote for these things. Let us at least like look into very basic properties like there's not a single signer that can rug everybody.
Yep,
And yet no one, even amongst the Curve community that you would hope are smart and paying attention, aren't actually doing that. So you get these cases where people have to go in and like take the gauge out, and then people scream bloody murder.
exactly. Yeah, the Curve risk team actually recently engaged with us. I'm excited to talk to them because we can't rug. It's permissionless.
Nice, nice. Oh, they're great. They do such good work.
Yeah, they do. They do. I've seen, I'd say like half of their stuff, but I've always been impressed by the depth of it. And that's the type of thing that needs to be incentivized throughout DeFi.
And it's really frustrating because despite the fact they do such good work, and despite the fact when you ask people after all these like scams, the people always say like, if only there was a group that was writing like blah 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 reports like this. And we're like, oh, you mean like the crypto risks team, which is
Yeah.
already doing exactly that. And then they look and they release these reports that get like 10 likes or something when it it just makes you worry that it's like, okay, no one actually cares about risk, no one cares about decentralization, no one cares about all these things that we need people to care about.
Until they do.
Right,
Uh,
yeah.
right? Like one of the things with RSV, our original beta, our token that was backed by the three different stablecoins, right? Like we had to change the basket 3 times. And what was great is our users didn't have to notice, right? Like all the users care about in the app is that the thing stays at $1. Um, but we were able to make those changes behind the scenes to ensure that that happened. And they didn't have to worry about it. And so like I do think that there's some benefits to This is actually what I think is one of the big benefits of a diversified asset-backed currency, is that users don't need to care. It's really just a particular set of people that need to care. And ideally, those people are financially incentivized, aka RSR stakers that will lose their money, right? Is our take on it. There might be better takes in the future, but it's like a way to incentivize a core set of people to make good decisions, but then let the broader set of people not really care about it, and just
So
assume that their money will continue to be what their
does
money
this
is.
mean that the kind of no coiners are right, that we're just going to rebuild everything that exists off chain on chain? Like
Hopefully, in a more
we're going to create the Fed on chain, we're going to create the FCC on chain, we're going to create the CFTC on chain.
But you know what? That's probably good, right? Like I think that one of the big issues in our system right now is that there isn't transparency, and so people aren't able to understand the risks. And does everyone need to understand the risks? No. But does like a core set of people need to understand the risks? I think yes. And I think that the DeFi transparency is actually like a huge unblocker for people to really understand the risks behind things.
But
Um,
so I agree with you, but how do we build a system like this where that doesn't inevitably get corrupted? Because if we assume that DeFi
yeah.
TVL goes from a few hundred billion to a few hundred trillion or whatever, like the incentives to like get evil people into these positions of power in the decentralized governance are going to be huge. Like I don't know how we stop it. We need to think of it now before we get to $1 trillion TVL. Otherwise, it'll be way too late.
Yeah, I agree. We have to figure out a way to separate some of the powers, I think. Um, we actually have a governance research team that is focused on this because we don't think the token voting scales to trillions of dollars, right? At the end of the
Right.
day, you can't let there be like a flash loan governance attack when trillions of dollars is stored in something. You got to figure out some checks and balances. And so we've got a research team that's been experimenting with some pretty interesting ideas. And we'd love to engage with any other governance research teams out there. But they're experimenting with things like um, different sets of decisions can have different time periods in which they can be implemented. Things like parameters can be changed within uh, a certain minimized subset uh, within like quickly, and then in order to make larger changes, it has to take like months, right? And so there's some interesting things that you can potentially do there to try to um, add in protections and time for market reaction that prevents the like overnight rug, um, which is possible in a lot of DeFi right now if you're not careful.
And I don't think people really have an appreciation for how tough it is to get decentralized governance right, because you have to think of every unforeseen scenario well in
Yeah.
advance. And like, if you get something slightly wrong, like you can get rugged. So it's like having to basically like have the precision of immutable smart contract engineering, but with humans as the variables and humans being like the most unpredictable variable.
Some of the most brain busting work that I've done at Reserve was designing, working with the team to design our governance implementation, which is fork of Compound, except if you have a single token that can be staked in multiple places, it opens up new types of attacks. And so doing the defensive design and brainstorming on that was super painful to come up with like what's the way to protect against this. And so we came up with we added a new role to governance, which is the guardian, and they can basically say no to anything, to any proposal, and just to prevent that. And so it's a band-aid, right? Like we don't think it scales, right? Like, do you want just this single party to do it? No, you probably want some other type of aspect, but um, yeah, we're constantly iterating on new ideas with the governance research team.
What I'm really worried about is that the way that like this has gotten solved so far in cryptocurrency is almost like this sort of rapid evolution, right? 1,000 protocols launch, 990 of them get rugged, and the 10 that don't get rugged, people copy on that and build again. But are we gonna have to go through like the like same situation where, okay, maybe we emerge from let's say the end of 2023 with 50 viable protocols. DeFi summer starts again, and like these 50 viable protocols all get big, and then 90% of them all died because of their governance was slightly misconfigured, and we're down to like 2 or 3 surviving protocols again. Like, are we just gonna have to have this like rapid cycle of punctuated equilibrium, trial and error?
Maybe, maybe, but that might be good.
Well, not
Like,
for
look,
us because we
there's
probably won't survive.
maybe if we're going out on the risk spectrum, but I don't put the majority of my funds on DeFi into anything but Curve and Aave in Compound, right?
I know, but one of those rugs, and we're both gonna be on the streets.
Yes, exactly. But um, I'm a big believer in experimentation to get to better solutions over time. And so I think like rapid experimentation is good. It's actually, we launched as a platform because we don't know what the backing should be for inflation proof currency. And so we're hopeful that people launch a whole bunch of different things and then one of them gets popular. Um, the the governance thing is interesting though, right? Like the US government arrived at our model of government uh, after many, 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 thousands of years of testing different types of government, right? With the checks and the balances and the different groups. Is the US government perfect? Definitely not, right? And there's lots of issues. But it's worked for 200 years for the most part. And so I guess I'm hopeful that we can see more rapid testing and different models that are tested uh, to get to a good one for the future. So that's a long way of saying I don't know the answer, but I'm hopeful that lots of tests will help us find ones that work.
Yeah, I actually on that front, my theory is that one of these countries, like an El Salvador, is going to like pave the way for like a digital nation state, right? Balaji talks about the digital nation state.
Yeah.
My guess is it's going to be one of these small countries that just decides to embrace cryptocurrency and sees massive economic growth, such that every country starts adopting it, and the U.S. starts incorporating such elements. Um, but yeah, it might be like after multiple revolutions before that we get to that. So we'll see how that goes. But
I think
um,
that's probably right. I mean, look at companies. It's really hard for large incumbents to test and disrupt, right? It's like the classic Clay Christensen is the disruption theory guy, right?
mhm.
It's kind of the classic thing of large companies have a hard time testing new things out. Um, there's more to lose.
Yet I actually feel like some of the companies are going to be along for the ride, like Visa and Mastercard, like are reportedly like experimenting a lot. So
Yeah.
I kind of get the impression some of the companies are going to adapt, and we might end up with again with a financial situation that's just the same old situation, but on chain, higher gas fees.
But it comes with some good things because people
Yeah,
can choose what to do with their money, and there's transparency, hopefully.
that's true.
Um,
That's true.
although, if you've
So
ever, I imagine you've done this more than me. If you look into the data on a blockchain, it's really hard to figure out what's going on.
sometimes, but I like it because it is like you can actually figure it out, or you can ask someone smarter than you. In my case,
Yeah,
if they can figure it out.
exactly.
Um, so you talked to like obviously Reserve's mission is to like defend the world against inflation. What is Reserve's take on FPIS and FPI Frax's index inflation index stablecoin? Because to
Good
me, I
question.
mean, it's really surprised that that has not caught on to the or captured people's attention to the degree I think it should.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think FPI is really cool. I'm hopeful that it works. I think it's an interesting experiment. Um, I find it so historically, the way to fight inflation is to somehow harness GDP growth, right? Whether at like a micro level, your stocks need to grow faster than the dollar or than the inflation of the dollar, right?
Right.
Or at the macro level, when GDP growth is high, inflation is usually lower, right? Uh, at the broad economy sense. And so the thing that scares me a bit about FPI is that it is harnessing some economic activity, but you're basically betting that the economic activity will be higher than the CPI, as opposed to sometimes it being higher, sometimes it being lower. And so like we don't set a yield, like our tokens don't set a yield and this is what the yield is going to be. You're just hopeful that it'll be close, right? And so I think that that's a little bit more scalable in the long term, but I don't know. Who knows? Maybe the two token model with FPIS and FPI can help weather those storms. But I'm a huge proponent of more experimentation, so I love to see it.
I have to admit, I still don't understand exactly how it works.
I mean, my understanding is that the backing is basically deployed in Curve, and they try to beat inflation, and if they don't, FPIS holders take a hit. Is my understanding, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, that's somewhat my understanding. It just still I don't understand where it's not conjuring money out of thin air. Like,
There's a bit of that,
right, you
yeah.
have like it's tough, frankly, to like beat inflation. You there seems like there has to be a pile of money moving in from somewhere. Is that, I guess, like, could I frame it as like it's all the people buying FPIS are betting, they're dumping money in. I know I can't figure it out.
I think FPIS, my understanding is that FPIS holders are betting that DeFi yields will beat inflation.
Okay, so the money comes from the people making that bet, basically.
I think so. Because FPIS, because if the backing of FPI is higher than inflation, then FPIS holders get it, right? So they get the additional yield on top of that's higher than inflation. And so they're basically, I think FPIS holders are betting that on-chain yields are higher than inflation.
The other one I really didn't get was like they have an FPI Frax curve pool. So like, why on earth are they like, if fighting inflation is your big thing, why are you diluting it 50% with a token that's not? It just doesn't. It didn't make sense to me. I still aped, even though it didn't make sense to me, just because I didn't want to bet against it. I was like, okay,
Well,
I
for
get half of inflation, basically, right?
yeah, exactly. Well, for LPs, that's a different bet, right? If you're
Yeah.
not holding FPI directly, you're just trying to get high yield on your dollars, then you'll take that half yield or half the inflation
Yeah,
yield.
but then it's
Uh,
like I'm losing only half of what everyone else is losing on inflation.
yeah. I mean, I think a curve pool actually launched today for high USD. I think I saw that it got
Oh,
deployed.
excellent.
So,
Thanks. I didn't see that.
yeah.
That's cool. I mean, yeah, you alluded to it at the beginning, but yeah, like we haven't really talked too much about like all the amazing stuff going on at Curve. But yeah, Curve USD is like starting to make its way into the UI as well. Like, is there any like thoughts that you're? I mean, obviously people can just use Reserve as like money Lego. Um,
Yeah.
do you foresee like Curve USD like becoming a big part of that, or is that just like too far down the rabbit hole for people?
It's I mean it's interesting, right? Like CRV USD is very similar to DAI,
Hmm.
right? It's just different collateral.
Right.
And so there could be a world where curve pools with CRV USD are an interesting collateral type. I imagine that curve will be incentivizing the heck out of them. So it could be an attractive backing. Um, I imagine that Misha's wallet will be voting pretty heavy on those pools.
He only has 300 million to throw around. Like he can
Yeah.
only do so much.
I thought it was 200, 200
It's
maybe.
250 something million. Yeah, I think the bear market's hitting him hard. He's having to cut back his lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I don't see why it would be any different than DAI as like a
Hmm.
trusted, assuming that it works. I don't see any reason to think that it would be any different than DAI as a collateral. Um, so I'm hopeful that it'll be a cool collateral type. More, again, more experiments are good. But like what does it mean for reserve tomorrow? Probably nothing. We have to wait to see if those curve pools get big and if there's yield, and then a collateral plugin has to be built, etc.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but uh, but hey, we're large holders of Curve, of VECRV and VECRV derivatives, and so I'm excited about the additional revenue stream. Hopefully.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if it's gonna like make a big difference overnight.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm pretty bullish on it. It's been a lot of fun watching the watching Mitch posting stats for how his thing is doing, and he couldn't have asked for a better test because it's like he put his $1 million in and just keeps getting eaten into it. But the thing that's missing right now from the UI, and I don't think it's actually like an easy way to solve because Curve's UI doesn't have like a database it can like use to store values, but just a
yeah,
question of like how much money have you gained or lost in doing this, right? Because there may actually bizarrely be some scenarios where you end up better off when the price goes down. In
hmm,
that, so like the idea is you're at these different bands, right? And the bands
yeah,
get liquidated into Curve USD. But if the price goes down enough, then those like early bands where it's liquidating at a super high price, you might end up with more in Curve USD um,
yeah,
than you end up with now, once it gets round trip, you're back to like you're back to like, and the prices are back up, like, and it gets reconverted. Then you certainly lost some money. But I think there was a situation early on in testing where someone was like, "Can I liquidate myself now? Because if I liquidate myself now, I'm actually at a gain."
yeah. It is kind of funny. Um,
So I was
yeah,
just wondering if that
it'll be,
happened to Mitch in his situation.
it'll be, yeah. I'm excited to see what happens with Curve USD. I'm super excited for the lower gas V2 pools.
Yeah, me too. I think that one's going to make a more immediate impact on things.
I couldn't believe that half of VCRV revenue comes from the Tri Crypto pool.
Yeah,
Um,
and it barely does volume compared to the huge amount in three curve.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's pretty cool. And also, selfishly for Reserve, we're excited for the low gas version of the V2 pools because, like high USD and EUSD is a
Hmm.
V2 pool, right? Um, Same with ETH Plus and ETH.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
that's a V2. So
both of those could probably be V1 pools, though, right?
it could be, but it's more similar to like a liquid staking.
It
Uh,
appreciates in value. Okay,
yeah,
so
because it appreciates in value. So it's
I don't think there's a two token try crypto coming anytime soon, unfortunately.
Oh, I thought the V2 pools for Curve are two token,
So
the
yeah,
low gas.
at present they're V2 pools with two tokens, but I think the one that's being launched, Try Crypto NG, requires three tokens.
Oh, interesting. Um,
So
Interesting.
but
So in theory, it could
that
be
being
like,
said, I don't think that I need to look into this, but I remember Convex relaunched their Convex curve pool as I think a V2 pool. So anyway, I'm the dumbest person on the team, so you'd want to ask like Fiddy or someone smart about this.
that's interesting. I didn't realize it. I thought it was going to be the two token pools as well. Um,
But the
but
two token might, I mean, so I think that maybe it's coming soon. Either way, like we need to wait, I believe, for Viper 3.8 to be released because it doesn't verify an Etherscan. Or if Etherscan wants to fix it, then maybe we could like go a lot quicker.
yeah, that's what Naga King mentioned that too. It's blocked by the Viper issue.
But you know
Um,
what the heck? If it's if you have to do a three pool, it's not the end of the world, right?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of interesting. It would be cool to have EUSD and high USD and USDC or and Curve USD, right? Like that could be a kind of cool pool.
Yeah,
Um,
I feel like Curve and so I've been at Curve like not as long as so I was there before they launched Try Crypto. Um, they obviously got like a lot of mileage out of three curve, but it seems to me like this idea that you need to have three assets in a pool to be like the most stable configuration doesn't quite necessarily fit, right? Because like DAI was always like this weird kind of third token that was just plugged into three pool.
yeah,
But it didn't seem to, it was just basically like doubling the weight of USDC in the pool ultimately.
yeah,
Try crypto worked pretty well, I think, but that's like a different thing. But like there's like the three Bitcoin pool where they had for a while where they had and Ren, WBTC, and then SBTC. SBTC had like almost no liquidity, so it's almost like these three pools suffer from the lowest like market cap asset.
yeah, yeah. It is kind of funky. I wonder if the new three pool will be Curve USD, USDC, and Tether.
Yeah, I I could see it happening. But like I know Fiddy has he's launched a few just testing. So he launched a few like try crypto pools, but one with USDC, one with USDT.
Hmm.
Um, and he thinks that the existence of those pools is going to be like relatively competitive, not 100% competitive with Uniswap, but somewhat competitive.
I think I saw something that most of the one of the bigger reasons that Try Crypto hasn't taken off or eaten into more of the Uniswap volume is because it's Tether, not USDC.
Yeah, I've heard. That's I think Fiddy's subscribing to that thesis too.
Okay,
So
interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. It would be pretty cool if, yeah. I mean, I'm personally a B CRV holder.
me too, me too. So I'm hopeful to see what happens. But yeah, we'll see. So you're in San Francisco, and you mentioned Coinbase earlier. Do you ever like get a chance to hang out with Brian Armstrong at some of the various crypto events, or is he no longer
I
going to those?
I don't know. I haven't met Brian.
Oh,
I've
he's a cool
I've
guy.
done some,
I met him
he's
when I was down at SF. He's like super approachable. Like he strong believer in crypto.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I've been a Coinbase user since 2014. I'm a huge fan of Coinbase. I think they're doing great work. They're fighting the fight for everyone at the moment, and definitely on Team Coinbase. I'm a
Yeah.
subscriber to Coinbase One. Uh, the um, I've spent some time with Jesse Polak
Hmm.
uh, from the Base team, and I'm pretty excited about watching Base get deployed and to see what happens there. We'll probably deploy this actually might be some alpha. We'll
Oh
likely
yes, yes, alpha.
we're likely going to deploy the protocol there. We're
Nice.
testing it out and checking it out. Um, like I mentioned, it's a meta protocol, and so it does rely on other protocols launching there quickly to be useful. But I think it could be pretty cool to see what people experiment with in low fee environments.
Yeah.
Um,
You're already fairly multi-chain. What do you use for the multi-chain transactions?
like personally,
No, no, no. I meant reserve protocol. I believe like a lot of the tokens you launch can be bridged to other chains, right?
yeah, exactly. So
What are you using for that?
we haven't none of them have been bridged yet.
Um,
But I'd expect that native bridges would be our first approach. Um, Bridges are the most dangerous part of DeFi, right? And
yes.
so it's a bit scary. And like we chose Ethereum originally for two main reasons. One, we think it's the safest. If you're going to build a 10,000 year inflation-proof currency, I think Ethereum has the best security model.
Hmm.
Um, the other reason is 65% of DeFi liquidity is on Ethereum. Uh, right? And so again, meta protocol, we require other liquidity to be wrapped. Um, and so, but like the base bridge seems like a place that our tokens could be bridged to, and then that over collateralization works cross chain, the diversification, the yield appreciation, everything works cross chain. And so, but yeah, same thing with Polygon. You could bridge our tokens to Polygon and use them there, and get all the same properties. Or you can bridge them to a SEX, right? Like our app is just a centralized exchange for the most part, and so they can be used there and retain all the same properties. So it's yeah, I think I'm excited to see L2s get better and more adoption and more usage. I hate transacting personally on L1s. It's it's
I
so
can't
damn
afford it.
expensive.
I'm
Yeah,
broke.
exactly. Especially recently, it's felt like 2021 all over again.
I know. I haven't done a transaction in weeks. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Um, So, uh, what about? So, I mean, in the podcast with Rex, you talked a little bit about forex, and like the idea that Curve could be used for forex. That would seem like such a natural thing, also
Yeah.
for what you're building at Reserve. Like, has there been a lot of like merchant demand for, like let's say like peso to dollar
Yeah,
transactions, maybe?
definitely. We actually the app launched in Mexico,
Hmm.
and so in general, we're excited about more virtual or tokenized currencies. There's actually a really cool company in Argentina. It's called Noom Finance. that's been doing tokenized. It's like DAI for all the currencies, and so there's a peso. I believe there's a Peruvian. There's an Argentinian peso. There's a Peruvian. I forget the name of the currency. And there's two others that I think there's a Brazilian real and one other. And so it'll be really cool to see like as those tokens grow, can they be wrapped together? Could there be like an aggregate version of all the Latin American currencies? Could there be a or can those get deployed in DeFi and can they be interesting savings type tokens for more people? So I think I'm excited about that. I think Forex markets are some of the largest markets in the world.
Huge, huge. Like it's such a huge opportunity. I'm surprised we haven't seen more. Andre tried a little bit with his like he had like IB like versions of these different like tokens, but I am really surprised that that one hasn't become a use case in DeFi yet. And it just seems to me like Reserve Protocol is the one that could do it if anyone.
I'd love to see it. I think the what's interesting with currencies, especially in markets like Argentina, is the Oracle problem's pretty hard.
Hmm.
Which price do you use?
The government price or the actual price, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So there's an interesting aspect
that's an
there.
interesting aspect.
But that's actually something that Curve could help solve, right? Like if
Hmm.
there's an active market for the Argentinian peso and the dollar on Curve, then that could, with like TWAPs or whatever,
Yeah,
that
so
could act as a better oracle.
yeah, so the tricky thing for curve solving it is you still need someone that has like enough market, like enough of a business model to want to like incentivize the pool, right? Like Mitch will do some, which is not really a sustainable thing, but
Yep.
like there's not like a way to like attract a ton of liquidity to the pool otherwise, unless
Trading fees.
you can get some in trading fees, yeah, yeah, but
It's
it's
not high enough at the moment, but in theory, if these pools are actively used
yeah.
and not a liquidity sink like they are at the moment, then in theory they could actually be an interesting opportunity.
And I do feel
Um,
that for the V2 pools. It's just it could be really tough for people to like calculate like almost like so I like it as a passive LP, right? The V2 pools because I like with Try Crypto it's like I like dollars, I like I like ETH, I like Bitcoin, so I don't
yep.
mind like impermanent loss on those. But I kind of feel like for more advanced versions, like maybe someone do it, but I feel like you kind of need the like the act super active like ability to like more like a Uni V3 type situation, right? Where you can like, because traders want to play games with it, right? Like they want to short dollars and
I know I'm aware of some folks that will like take out shorts on Binance for half the position and then
right,
just farm the rewards. Um, but yeah, again, traditional finance is all about rates.
yeah. That
No,
being
no,
said, I think like if you want to have like a because there've been talks of like a pan like a currencies like a pan like Southeast Asian currency, for example. Like I do think like the idea of like putting a basket of three different like countries' currencies into a pool and using the LP token as that basket. I think
yeah,
if they're smart, they'd think of that, but whatever.
yeah.
We're running a bit low on your time, aren't we?
Oh yeah, we are.
All right,
We are.
so just a couple of quick lightning round questions that I've been asking a lot of the guests lately. 'Cause I'm kind of curious to hear takes on this. Yes or no? Do we live in a simulation?
No.
Okay, you're one of the few people. Most people are saying yes.
I mean, it depends what level of simulation. I think there's I think that the simulation of what is important in the world and what kind of information people are given is potentially a simulation. But like, is it Matrix level? I don't know. Right?
Well,
Feels pretty real.
if it is a simulation, why isn't it very good? I'm just kidding. I'm just
Well, I know, but to push back on that, right? Like, I think life now is better than it's ever been in the history of the world.
oh, I just meant like poorly programmed. Like no one would believe
Oh,
this.
yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
No,
Exactly.
I don't tend to believe we're in a simulation, but the amount of people that do believe it makes me think that if enough people believe it, it could become true.
Did they really believe it though, or did they say that for the memes?
I don't know. It's tough to say. It's tough to say. All right, next one. Artificial superintelligence. Do you believe that there is a scenario where artificial superintelligence is going to destroy the world in some capacity?
Yeah, I think it would be. I think it would be unrealistic to not see that as a sliver of a percent, or
Okay.
whatever the percentage is, right?
So you
Um,
think possible but not likely.
I don't have a strong enough view on likely or unlikely, but definitely possible.
Hmm. Okay. So it could happen, but you don't yet know if it will happen. Okay.
Yes, agree. Exactly.
Interesting.
I hope it
So
doesn't.
you're, yeah. Well, I'm. If you hoped it did happen, that would be
Yeah.
something else. No, you're sort of like the reverse of what most people say. Most people say yes, we live in a simulation, and no to the artificial intelligence one.
Hmm. Uh, I mean, I think it's also possible that there's like a nuclear holocaust, right?
Right. I think
Do I
we
think
should
it's
start
likely?
asking
No.
that one too.
Yeah. Do I think it's likely at this point? I don't think so, but it's definitely possible.
The
And I'd
Holocaust
love.
one's like kind of easy because it doesn't change how you live your life if there is going to be one, right?
Should it change your life on if you think there's going to be an AGI, right?
That one, like, I could see is a bit more arguable. Like, you might be able to. I guess it would depend on the attack vector. But like, maybe there's some more you could do to like keep yourself safe. Like, you could live in a cabin without like electronic appliances, I guess. Um, but there's not
Do you
much you can do to prevent against nuclear holocaust, is there?
you can live away from everyone else.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. I guess so. But obviously,
No,
like, you're in a major urban area, so
yeah, yeah. I think San Francisco is probably first to go in both of those.
yeah, and so for people in major urban areas, there's like nothing you can do, right? You just go on living your life, and if you're wrong, it ends so fast you don't even notice. So, um,
Exactly.
cool, cool. Any other just kind of like broader thoughts on DeFi, cryptocurrency we didn't get to? Like, I would have liked to have dug into your journey from 2014 till now, um, because it was such a like you were saying, like there was so long where it was like cryptocurrency was there and like you could kind of play with it, but it passed the singularity in my point, like 2020 when DeFi
Yeah.
and on-chain activity was like real. Like that was a tipping point for me too, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm all in on this.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I've over the last 7 years, I flipped back and forth from like, is Ethereum going to be the thing? Is Bitcoin going to be the thing? Um, I still have no idea. I do use Ethereum every day, and I don't use Bitcoin that much.
Right? Yeah.
It's just a hold for me. But I do think that like ordinals and stacks and things like that are some of the most exciting stuff that's happened in Bitcoin in years, and so I'm excited to see where it goes. Um, but still very early. Who knows? It might just end up being JPEGs, like a lot of NFTs. But um, yeah, in general, I'd say that yeah, more excited about Bitcoin than I've been in a long time.
Yeah.
Um, what's happening there? But yeah, definitely, I use Ethereum every day,
Yeah.
and
No, I hear that. And yeah, I mean, we could probably have a whole like other separate discussion. I'm also excited about it just because like if Bitcoin value starts getting like if Bitcoin maxis don't just hold, if they start using it, that's $1 trillion in
yeah,
additional value. So I actually could see Bitcoin DeFi eclipsing Ethereum DeFi overnight. Um, and it would also, I think, have a upwards effect on Ethereum DeFi because people would start like bridging assets to Ethereum when they saw it was faster. Um, and you'd probably also see like Bitcoin starting to explode because mainstream press does cover Bitcoin a bit more, so people would start to realize. Um, so I actually like am bullish on it, although I think that ultimately it would lead to Ethereum like firmly flipping Bitcoin when people realize how much better it is
yep.
than Bitcoin. But that, again, bullish on both.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Any other like things at reserve cooking that we should be excited about or we should know about that we didn't get to talk about?
Um, I think we kind of covered everything for the most part. I really excited about the new R tokens. It'll be interesting to see what those curve yields look like. Um, I would, I'm still fascinated to think to understand how LPs choose their positions in curve. Like the USD pool has been at 12% now for a couple weeks, and it's USDC and Tether and USDC and Frax, right? And so I'm like,
Right. Yeah, makes sense.
it's like why is there a perceived risk by the market? That's something that's interesting to me. Um,
Maybe people just
there
can't afford
are
gas to get in.
could be that. I mean, definitely could be that. Yeah, we're excited to incentivize the other pools as well when they launch, and so it'll be exciting to see what people do there. And and yeah, we talked about base, and there's some other things that I'm not ready to share yet.
Oh, okay, okay.
But we've got some other interesting things cooking up as well. Um, but yeah, I'm overall excited, and our goal is to see the market cap of the R tokens grow, and so hopefully
Nice.
that continues to happen.
Well, if there's ever more, feel free to stop back, join us anytime. We can
Yeah,
have another long conversation about where our reserve is next time we talk. But other than that, really
yeah,
appreciate the time. Next up, I guess I don't know if this qualifies as alpha, but I will see you in person next in Paris. Right? We're
yeah,
talking about doing a Llama Party IRL again.
yeah. That'll be awesome. Are you going to be at the Stable Summit?
So I believe so. I don't know a ton about it, despite the fact that it is curve throwing it, and despite the fact I'm going there. I got accepted to speak at ETHCC,
Nice,
so I'll be speaking one of those days on stablecoin risk factors. Um,
awesome.
so I'm excited about that, and I'm sure like I'll probably be spending most of my time at the stablecoin summit. Other than that, if they let me in. Um,
Let's talk about that. Yeah, we're definitely going to be at the Stable Summit as well.
Awesome,
Well,
awesome. Like, who do I have to bug to get tickets to that?
um, I don't know when the tickets are going to launch.
Okay.
Uh, but I know that we were talking to the team that's doing it, so I know we can help connect you to them when that's happening.
All right. So, but anyway, like, other than that, we're likely gonna throw another Llama Party IRL because I last one was a
Um,
big success. Except I need to tweak a couple of things that I stupidly insisted on, like the Discord thing that like ruined it. For like a lot of people on stage, no one even used. So, like, I'm getting rid of that for the next one.
our film team will be there again, so we can partner together.
That's awesome. So like hopefully yeah, we can connect with them ahead of time and like get it right
Yeah,
cuz you definitely saved my bacon because I was going to be doing it on the street if you hadn't come along. So,
yeah, we can do another one. It would be fun to do it at the Stable Summit, actually.
oh, that would be great. Yeah. If
Yeah,
I can find a way in, I would do it.
yeah. Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. But other than that, everyone, thank you for. See like very few people on Discord today. I think everyone's touching grass. A few people watching on YouTube, so thank you all for sticking with it. If we're gonna go dark here, so if you need more content, do check out that interview that Thomas Matamore did with Rex over on that podcast. So other than that, it is May 12th. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe, friends.
Great chatting, Garrett.
Likewise. Let me kill